If you are planning to trade a car in this year, there is a number in your head right now, and there is a very good chance the dealership is about to hand you one that is thousands of dollars below it. That gap is what this whole video is about. Because here's the thing almost nobody tells you. A dealer will hardly ever look you in the eye and say no. Saying no makes people angry, and angry people leave. What they do instead is give you a number so low that you refuse it yourself, walk out, and blame the market. That is a refusal. It just wears better clothes. I have spent a long time around cars that were about to change hands. Under them, behind them, with a scan tool, standing in the drizzle at auction lanes on a Tuesday morning, watching what actually clears and what gets run through 3 times and driven back onto the trailer. And the pattern is not random. There are specific categories of vehicle that a franchise store simply will not put on its front line at any price, because the risk of owning it for 60 days is worse than the profit in it. By the end of this, you will know all 12 of those categories, why each one lands there, and what you should do with yours instead of walking into a showroom and hoping. Some of these you can fix in an afternoon for nothing. One of them you cannot fix at all, and the sooner you accept that, the more money you keep. And one of the 12 is on this list because of a single part that costs less than a tank of gas, a part that was standard on almost every car built that year, except the ones from 2 particular brands. That one is coming, and it is the one that will make you angry. Let me give you the frame first, because once you have it, every one of the 12 makes sense on its own. When you hand over your keys, a used car manager takes about 4 minutes with your car, and he's answering exactly one question. Not, what is this worth? The question is this a retail unit or a wholesale unit? A retail unit goes on his lot, gets detailed, gets financed to a customer, and makes him real money. A wholesale unit gets run through an auction where he takes whatever the room gives him and moves on. The difference between those two answers on the same car is frequently $3,000 to $5,000, and you never see the moment he decides. He decides in the walk around. Everything on this list is something that pushes a car across that line into wholesale. Keep that in mind as we go. It is the thread running through all 12. Number 1, and the biggest single change in the last 18 months, the off-lease luxury electric car. Between 2023 and 2025, manufacturers pushed EVs out the door on leases about as hard as any product has ever been pushed, and those leases are coming home. Lease returns of electric vehicles are projected to be up something like 230% this year over last, jumping from around 2% of all lease returns to about 8%. That is a wall of nearly identical 3-year-old cars arriving at once. Now, put a number on what happens to them. According to the big depreciation study out this spring, nearly 1 million 5-year-old cars analyzed. The average vehicle in America loses about 42% of its sticker price in 5 years. Electric vehicles lose about 57%. And at the luxury end, it is uglier still. The worst performing BMW in that study, the electric i7, holds a little over a quarter of its original price after 5 years. Not a quarter of its loss, a quarter of its price. A used car manager knows exactly what is arriving behind you. He is not going to own a 6-year-old high-voltage German sedan with an unknown pack and a repair bill he cannot predict. He will bid it like scrap and let the specialists have it. I want to be honest about the other side of this, though, because the EVs are worthless line has gotten lazy. Used electric vehicles at the affordable end have actually firmed up this year. One market tracker had used EV prices up around 5% since January, with the fastest moving models selling in under 2 weeks. More than half of used EV inventory is now under $30,000. The market has split. Good, cheap, usable electric cars with documented battery health are moving fine. It is the expensive, complicated, badge-heavy ones nobody wants to own on their lot. Number 2 is worse, and it is the purest version of the problem, the orphan. A car whose manufacturer no longer exists. The clearest example is the Fisker Ocean. Fisker filed for Chapter 11 in June of 2024. Before that, in a last scramble, it had cut the Ocean Extreme from just under $69,000 to about $37,500. Then in bankruptcy, roughly 3,200 unsold Oceans went to a leasing company in a bulk deal that worked out to somewhere around 14 or 15,000 a car. Around 7,000 people had already taken delivery of one as a retail customer. What happened next is the part that matters for your trade-in. Windshields effectively vanished. By one account from the company's own former parts director, only a few dozen were released after the bankruptcy, split between the public and that leasing company. While there had been hundreds of requests outstanding before the doors closed, owners formed an association, hired lawyers, fought over server access and diagnostic tools, and have kept these cars alive largely by their own effort. That is genuinely impressive, and I take my hat off to them. But now stand in the used car manager's shoes. He is being asked to buy a car he cannot get a windshield for, cannot look up in a factory system, cannot warranty, and cannot hand to his own technicians. A well-kept 17,000-mile example sold at online auction this summer for a little under $16,000. That is what an orphan is worth to the open market when it has to find a buyer who actually wants it. A dealer will not be that buyer. This applies to any brand that has folded or pulled out of the market, not just this one. Number 3, the 2017 through 2022 Chevy Bolt, without paperwork. This one is fixable, and that is why I want you to hear it. Every Bolt built in those years got pulled into the battery recall over defective cells from the supplier. General Motors' actual remedy was serious, replacing modules and in many cases the entire pack, with the replacement carrying its own 8-year, 100,000-mile coverage starting from the day it was installed. So here's the split. A Bolt with a documented replacement pack is in effect an older car with a much newer heart and years of warranty left. A Bolt, where nobody can prove what was done, is a car that is harder to insure, harder to finance, and harder to sell. Same model year, same mileage, very different money. If you own one, this is a phone call. Get the recall and warranty history in writing from the manufacturer and hand that paper across the desk with the keys. In early 2026, these cars were living roughly in an $8,000 to $18,000 retail window, and which end of that window you land in is decided by a document, not by the car. Number 4. The early Nissan Leaf, and anything else still wearing the old CHAdeMO fast-charging plug. I have some sympathy here. The Leaf was the first mass-market electric car most Americans ever saw, and being first is expensive. It used a Japanese fast-charging standard that the rest of the industry walked away from. The 2026 Leaf itself dropped it in favor of the Tesla-style connector everyone has settled on. When the company that invented the port abandons the port, the message to the used market is not subtle. There is an adapter now out of China, and last I saw it was running about $1,000, roughly a tenth of what some of these cars are worth. Depreciation figures on the Leaf vary depending on whose data you use. I have seen 63% over 5 years from one firm and 66% from another. I will take the lower one because I would rather be conservative than dramatic, and even the lower one is brutal. Number 5. This is the one I promised you, and this is the one that should make you angry. Certain Hyundai and Kia models, roughly 2011 through 2021, built without an engine immobilizer. The immobilizer is a small piece of electronics. Your key or fob carries a chip, the car checks for it, and without the right answer, the engine will not run. It is not exotic. It has been in ordinary cars since the 90s, and the reason car theft in this country fell off a cliff over 3 decades is largely down to that one part. Here are the numbers from the insurance industry's own loss data people. For model year 2015, immobilizers were standard on 96% of vehicle series across every other manufacturer combined. For Hyundai and Kia that year, 26%. Go back to 2011, and it is even starker. 92% for everyone else, 17% for those two brands. Then a method for starting these cars with a screwdriver and a USB cable spread across social media, and thefts of those specific models went through the roof. Insurers responded the way insurers do. Some stopped writing new policies on certain model years in certain states. Others surcharged. People who already owned these cars found themselves unable to get coverage on a car they had done nothing wrong with. Now think about what that does to your trade-in. A dealer is not just judging your car. He is judging whether the next owner can get it financed and insured, because a car nobody can insure is a car nobody can buy. That is what pushes these across into the wholesale column, and that is why the offer comes back so low it feels like an insult. There is a software update available, delivered starting in February 2023, and it works better than I expected. Vehicles that got it showed theft claims down about 53% and whole vehicle thefts down 64%. If you own one of these and have not had it done, do it. It is free and it takes under an hour. Bring the paperwork when you trade. Number 6, the Nissan CVT cars. Altima, Sentra, Versa, Rogue, Pathfinder. Once they are past about 90,000 miles, a continuously variable transmission has no fixed gears. It runs a steel belt between two cone-shaped pulleys that change diameter, so the engine can sit at its happiest speed while the ratio slides underneath it. On paper, it is elegant. In the versions that ended up in these cars, the belt and pulley surfaces wore in a way that produced shudder, hesitation, and eventually a car that would not pull. Nissan settled a class action over these transmissions for $277.7 million without admitting anything. Owners got an extended warranty and, in some cases, a $1,000 voucher toward another Nissan. And I want you to sit with that for a second, because that voucher is the remedy for a transmission problem was a coupon toward buying another one from the same company. An appraiser drives your car around the block. If he feels that shudder pulling away from a stop sign, the number he writes down assumes a transmission, not a repair, a replacement. We are halfway through the list, and if you have found this useful so far, subscribe. That is all I am asking. The second half is where the legal and title problems live, and those are the ones that cost the most money. Number 7, the Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrid under a park outside order. In June of this year, Chrysler recalled just over 17,000 Pacifica plug-ins built between August of 2020 and May of 2022. After battery cells from an alternate assembly line at the supplier were found capable of failing internally and going into thermal runaway, 4 fires were tied to it. The instruction to owners was to park outside, away from buildings and other vehicles, and not to charge it on a plug-in hybrid. The entire reason you bought it switched off. That was not the first time either. There were earlier campaigns on Pacifica hybrids with the same shape of warning going back years. And Stellantis has since dropped its plug-in hybrids in North America entirely for the 2026 model year, which removes the last thing a dealer might have liked about it. I do not know, as I record this, how far along the permanent fix has gotten across the affected fleet. Recall remedies move at different speeds in different regions, and I would rather tell you that than guess. What I can tell you is that no dealer is parking a van on his front line that he has been told not to park near his building. Number 8 is broader than any single model, and it catches an enormous number of ordinary cars. An open, unrepaired safety recall. Federal law stops a dealer from delivering a new car with an open recall. Used cars are a different legal situation, but the liability exposure is real enough that most franchise stores simply will not retail one, and their insurers and their attorneys back them up on that. So your car goes to auction instead. The biggest single case is still the Takata airbag inflators. That recall is over a decade old now. It covers 67 million inflators across 19 manufacturers. 28 people in this country have been killed by them and more than 400 injured. And as of this summer, vehicle history data still shows roughly 4.8 million vehicles on American roads with that repair not done. That is down about 20% in 2 years, which is progress. But it is still an enormous number of cars. The oldest of those inflators, the ones in certain 2001 to 2003 Honda and Acura models, carry roughly a 50% chance of rupturing in even a minor crash. 50%. That is not a recall, that is a coin flip. And there is an active do not drive warning on them with free parts, free towing, and a loaner waiting. Check your own car tonight, take the 17-character VIN off the bottom corner of the windshield, put it into the federal recall lookup, and see what comes back. It is free, it takes 90 seconds, and the repair is free. If something is open, get it done before you sit down at a desk to negotiate, because you have just moved your car back across the line from wholesale to retail, and you did it for nothing. Number 9, the diesel pickup with its emissions equipment deleted. The EPA has estimated there are more than 500,000 diesel pickups in the United States with the emissions hardware fully removed, something like 13% of the certified diesel fleet. A lot of those trucks are on their second or third owner now, and plenty of those owners have no idea what was done before they got it, because a delete does not show up on a vehicle history report. The legal picture shifted in January of this year. The Justice Department told federal prosecutors to stop bringing new criminal cases over tampering with onboard diagnostics. But, and this is the part getting lost in the noise, civil authority did not move an inch. The Clean Air Act still prohibits it. States still enforce it. And the per-violation civil penalties are still eye-watering, with each tampered component potentially counting separately. Figures I have seen for the current maximum vary quite a bit, depending on whether the source is talking about an individual owner or a business, so I will not pretend to a precision I do not have. The point stands either way. Now, here is the practical consequence. A franchise dealership will not take a deleted truck as a retail unit, and many will not take it at all. They are not being timid. They have seen what an EPA letter looks like arriving at a dealership, and they are not going to own a truck that generates one. If you are running a deleted truck, the cost of putting it back to stock is real money, but it is almost always less than the difference between selling it as a legal truck and selling it as a problem. Number 10, branded and title washed cars, salvage, rebuilt, and above all, flood. The scale here surprises people. Vehicle history data put something like 482,000 water-damaged cars on American roads at the start of last year, before that year's storm season added tens of thousands more. Estimates for individual states vary a lot depending on who is counting and how. I have seen Florida figures ranging from around 50,000 to over 80. So, treat those as ballparks rather than gospel. What is not in dispute is the direction of travel. And these cars do not stay where they drowned. That is the whole business model. They get bought at salvage auction, cleaned up by people who are very good at cleaning things up, and retitled through states with looser paperwork until the brand falls off the title. Then they surface in Illinois or Pennsylvania or Tennessee, looking showroom fresh, quietly corroding from the inside out. A dealer's appraisal software pulls the history before he has finished walking around your car. If there is a brand on that title or an insurance total loss in the record, he is a wholesale buyer, full stop. And honestly, he should be. Number 11, and this one is short because it is simple. The heavily modified car. Lift kit, loud exhaust, tinted to the legal edge, aftermarket wheels, tune on the ECU, full vinyl wrap. Every dollar you spend is a dollar off. Not neutral. Off. The dealer has to sell to the broadest possible buyer, and modifications shrink that pool to almost nothing while raising every question he has about how the car was driven. Sell it privately to somebody who wants exactly what you built, or put the stock parts back on. Those are the only two ways to see that money again. Number 12 is the one I have the most sympathy for. The perfectly good, ordinary 12-year-old commuter car with 160,000 miles on it. Nothing is wrong with it. That is what stings. It starts, it stops, it got the kids through school. But a franchise store cannot retail it. It will not pass their certification, no bank wants to write a note on it, and any repair it needs eats the entire profit. So it becomes an auction unit the second you hand over the keys, and the offer reflects the auction, not the car. This is the one where private sale is worth the hassle. There is a real buyer out there for a straight, honest, high-mileage car, and that buyer will pay meaningfully more than the auction will. They are just not standing in the showroom. Now, let me go back to the immobilizer because I do not want that one to pass as trivia. A passive immobilizer at the volumes a global automaker buys parts, costs a few dollars. Somebody in a room decided those few dollars multiplied across a few million cars a year were worth more than the risk of leaving them out. That is not a conspiracy. That is a line item. And here's the part that turns it from a bad call into something with your name on it. Canada requires immobilizers. So does Australia. So does the European Union. The United States does not. Same brands, same platforms, same assembly processes. And the version of the car sold to you was the one built to the standard that let them leave the part out. You were not offered a choice. You were never told there was a choice. You bought a car that met every federal safety standard on the books and was, by the industry's own loss data, in a category where 26% had the part and 96% of everybody else's did. Then the method got out, the thefts came, and every cost of that decision arrived at your door and not theirs. Your window, your steering column, your deductible, your premium, your policy that would not renew. And now your trade-in number because the used car manager knows the next buyer may not be able to insure it. The remedy? A software patch and a steering wheel lock. The patch works. I said so, and I meant it. But look at what actually happened over that whole arc. A part was left out to save money. The savings stayed upstream. The cost came downhill over the course of a decade and landed on you in 5 separate places. And by the time it reached you, it had been renamed. It was not called a missing part anymore. It was called a crime wave, and then it was called market conditions, and then it was called what your car is worth. That is how this works. Almost every time somebody saves a fraction upstream, you pay it back years later with interest under a different name, and the arithmetic is arranged so that you can never quite point at the moment it was decided. Well, now you can point at it. Model year 2015, 26% versus 96. That number is not going to sound like trivia to you again. There is a bigger thing underneath all of this, and it is not really about cars. The ability to look at something you own and know roughly what it is worth before anyone tells you is a genuine skill. It is not a talent, and it is not luck. It is built out of paying attention, checking a few things, and being willing to hear an answer you do not like. Most people never build it, and so every valuation in their life is handed to them by whoever is standing on the other side of the transaction. And that is a strange way to live when you think about it. We will spend a weekend researching a $500 purchase and then accept a $15,000 valuation from a stranger with a clipboard because he said it confidently and the coffee was free. The skill transfers too, once you have learned to look at your own car coldly, to see the shutter in the transmission, the open recall, the brand on the title, to see it as the market sees it rather than as your memories of it. You have learned something you will use on a house, on a piece of equipment, on a job offer. Sentiment is a fine thing to have about an object. It is a terrible thing to negotiate with. So here is what you actually do. This is a procedure, not a rule of thumb, and it works on your numbers, not mine. Step 1. Tonight, run your VIN through the Federal Recall Lookup. Anything open? Book it. Free work, and it may move your car across the retail line by itself. Step 2. Get your actual payoff figure in writing from the lender, not the balance on the app, the 10-day payoff. Because nearly 3 in 10 trade-ins toward a new car right now are underwater, and the average shortfall in the most recent quarter was just under $7,000. If that is you, you need to know before you are sitting at the desk, not after. Step 3. Collect 3 real cash offers from the national online buyers. Free, no obligation, about 15 minutes each. That is your floor, not an estimate. IKEA, an offer somebody will actually honor. Step 4. Gather the paper. Recall completion, battery replacement, transmission work, service records. Every document is worth more than the same claim spoken out loud. Step 5. The decision. Compare the dealer's trade number against your best cash offer, and then check one local rule. In most states, though not all, and California is the big exception, you only pay sales tax on the difference between the new car and the trade. Do that math for your state and your price. If the trade offer plus that tax saving beats your best cash offer, trade it. If it does not, sell it yourself and hand the dealer cash. That is the whole decision, and it takes about 10 minutes once you have the numbers in front of you. And if you own something on this list, the general direction is clear enough. Off-lease luxury EVs, orphan brands, and cars under a park outside order are not getting easier to sell. Everything else here is a document problem, a repair problem, or a private sale problem, and all three of those are solvable. Do step 1 tonight, seriously. Windshield. VIN, 90 seconds, free lookup. By the time you go to bed, you will know whether you are sitting on an open recall, and if you are, you will have found the cheapest money you will make all year. Now, I want the confession, not the win. What did you trade in? What did it cost you? And what do you now know you should have done first? The lifted truck you sank $8,000 into. The lease you rolled into another lease. The one you took the first offer on because it was raining and you wanted to go home. Post it because someone reading is about a week away from making the identical move, and your bad afternoon might be the thing that stops them. And if you have appraised cars for a living and you think I have got any of this backwards, say so, plainly. I would rather be corrected in public than repeat something wrong for another year. I read the replies, all of them eventually usually later than I should. There is one thread here I deliberately left alone, because it is a whole subject on its own. What happens to these cars after the auction? Where the wholesale units actually go, who buys them, and what they get sold for 2 states over with a fresh detail and a clean-looking history. I keep running into it. I do not have it fully worked out yet, and when I do, I will bring it to you. Subscribe if you want to be around for that. Until then, check the VN, get the paper, know your own number before anybody offers you one.